Captain's log, stardate 042023, rounded off to the nearest decimal point. I have just watched Star Trek Picard Season 3, the series finale, and I want to share my thoughts. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. If this is your first time here, welcome. If at any point you like what you see or hear during the video, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know anytime we upload any new videos. Also, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button on your way out, as it really helps us. So with that said, let's get into this. For anybody who may not know, I know I haven't said this a whole lot, but for those who know me personally, Star Trek, especially the Next Generation show, for me was a huge part of my childhood. It's been a huge part of my life. All the movies, that particular crew, and any time that they're in Star Trek, for me it's a big thing. So when I heard about Season 3 being announced and what it was going to be as far as a reunion of that cast and that crew being together on screen, I immediately knew that this season for me was going to be must watch. I didn't realize that it was going to be so good. I feel like you could probably have watched the first 2 seasons of Picard and come into this season pretty much okay. You wouldn't really need a whole lot, with the exception of maybe a couple of the side characters. But the main plot, storyline, and most of your main TNG characters, you can come into the season as it being the first thing you've ever watched from Picard, and you're going to be totally okay. So with that said, the whole season was twisty-turny, in some ways a little bit predictable, at least for me. I will definitely say from about episode 4 on, I had a sneaking suspicion of who was behind everything, and I ended up being proven right, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. But the first several episodes, I actually really was curious as to what was going on and what was so important about Jack Crusher, who, spoilers, I'm just going to warn you now, from this moment forward, if you haven't watched any of the series, this is going to be very spoiler heavy. But for those who have watched, Jack Crusher, when it was revealed that that is the son of Beverly Crusher and Jean-Luc Picard. Somehow, I'm not surprised about that. There was always that underlining romance throughout the entire Next Generation, show, sometimes in the movies, and in novels and comics, they flirted with that quite a bit as well. So to learn that was not the biggest shock there at the beginning. But I will definitely say that the character of Jack Crusher is so interesting. He's everything that a young Jean-Luc Picard was, based on everything that you've heard about him. And then he's very much himself. He's very much his mother at the same time. So he's a very good amalgamation of his parents and then being his own, true self. And I love that. He's going to be a character that I hope they do more with, especially with the way they ended the series. The little, not really so much of an after credit scene, but definitely the last scene before they ended the series as a whole. With that said, they did an amazing job of not only presenting a very Star Trek-like story, they gave you the fan service. You got so many Easter eggs, anything that you could have hoped for. But at the same time, they were very tastefully done. You got all of these little guest spots. You had Moriarty reappear, who was a truly fascinating character on the couple of episodes that they were there on the Next Generation. Commander Shelby, who was there for just 2 episodes for the Best of Both Worlds 2-parter, to come back. She's a fleet admiral. So, and that was really cool. You got Ensign Rowe to come back as a commander in Starfleet Intelligence. It was so cool how they did all this. Not to mention what they did with Data. Data has always been one of those truly fascinating characters where Brent Spiner, I don't think it's enough credit for how good of an actor he is in general, but how great Data was. So to see what they did with him now and to make Data pretty much, half human, so to speak, with his appearance, he has feelings, he has humor. He was much of the humor in this. But, just all that aside, I could gush over the characters. Worf's dry sense of humor in this was so unbelievably hilarious. I can't tell you how many times I laughed at some of the things he would say. It was there. It was one of those, like, you could see those moments because those people had known each other for, as they say, 35 years, so over half their lives. It was just, the chemistry was so good. It was almost like none of them had ever parted ways. And I remember seeing an interview where the cast had said they actually have a group text that they still talk to each other through all these years, and you could see that they do that just by what you see on screen. Trust me when I say that you are going to have a great time watching this show. As far as other new characters that were introduced, of course, both of Geordi's daughters, especially the one that is an ensign and a pilot on the Titan. She's going to be something I think to watch if they continue doing series, which I will talk about at the end, what I hope comes from all of this. Then, of course, Captain Shaw of the Titan, who, spoiler alert, was killed during the series. I love that character. He was very much, a prick by the book, but at the same time, he was awesome in his own way. So it was just a very, very cool show. Let's talk about the plot. So you start out with everybody's after Jack Crusher. We find out that these people are chasing them in this really, really cool looking ship. I honestly thought it might be a Romulan thing at first because the ship was very reminiscent of the ship from the Kelvin timeline Star Trek movie that came forward through time and was basically running roughshod on the Federation. It had that kind of feel and that kind of look to it. But to learn that the captain was a changeling a couple of episodes in, I was like, okay. This is an interesting choice because when you think about things, the Enterprise, or the Next Generation crew, I should say, more specifically, were not really a part of the Dominion War. That was very much Deep Space Nine. But, nonetheless, they decided to use them, and it was an ingenious way that they did it. So, to have them supposedly, captured and in test tubes, and they were genetically altered so that they could actually look even more like humans. They could replicate human organs, etc., etc. That was really, really ingenious, especially when that came to light that is how they had evolved. Because at this point, they really weren't sure how they had evolved to that point. And when that was revealed, that was really, really, really interesting. Now, when I talk about the twist that for me was predictable, the first time I saw the visions that Jack was dealing with, where he had the red around him, the kind of almost web, spider-like looking stuff appearing around windows and doors, in my mind, I immediately was like, the Borg are going to be involved with this. Somehow Jack is integrated with the Borg in some weird way. That was the one part that ended up being right. But the way that it was done, to me, was absolutely ingenious. For it to be something genetic like that, where they implanted something in Captain Picard when he was the cutest, and for him to have passed that along, and it took a generation to activate as they learned, that was an absolutely brilliant way to take an enemy who basically we thought was done by the end of Voyager because of how Janeway had gone back in time and destroyed the Borg Queen and most of their transport conduits. So I thought it was really ingenious that they did that, and for the Borg Queen to have somehow survived this. So basically, for anybody who doesn't know, what they did was it was some kind of genetic thing to where it allowed the Borg Collective to tap directly into the human mind and take control of them and their ships as if they were drones. How they did this was basically they stole DNA from Picard. That's what they stole from the Daystrom station. It was Picard's original body. For anybody who doesn't know, Picard somewhere along the way in his lifetime, they thought basically died to Irumodic syndrome, and they transmitted his consciousness and I guess brain somehow into a synthetic body. So his actual body was left in the Daystrom Institute, which is where you see a lot of Easter eggs from the entire Star Trek mythos. There's the crazy Tribble, there's him, there's actually Admiral Kirk's body is in there. Much more. If you watch that, you may have to pause, rewind, and just look at every little thing that they show on panels indoors. It's a truly amazing thing. Like, you really have to pay attention to what they got there. But what they did was they modified that to somehow transmit to people when they're being transported. So somehow when they do this, it affects anybody who is under the age of 25, because I believe it's something about your cerebral cortex stops developing by that age. So you can't be modified, I guess is the best way to put it. And so that is basically what they were going to do. They were going to take control of all the fleet that were under the age of 25. And that's what they did. So the last 2 or 3 episodes, you see a fleet of starships that move. It's when they talk about a hive mind like the Borg are, that's how the ships moved. I'm trying to think of something where you've probably seen this in another series. Just think of a way like you've seen a flock of bees or something move, where they all move as one big thing. That's what the fleet looked like. They would all move as one, fire as one. It was the craziest thing to see in some of the formations that they did. So yeah, just an absolutely stunning series. What they did with 7 of 9, having her really come into her own as a first officer, and then to be promoted to a captain by the end of the series, I thought that was great. 7 is one of those characters that, because of her history with the Borg and kind of the character arc that they've used with her throughout Picard, all 3 seasons, it makes sense. She's an extremely intriguing character that I want to see more of. And that's frankly where I hope the Star Trek mythos goes. They basically, in the last episode, towards the end, Jack is in Starfleet and he's going to his first posting, which they basically take the USS Titan and they rename her to the Enterprise G. And 7 is given her first command. And then her first officer is someone that you've seen in the first couple of seasons as well. And Jack is kind of like a counselor to the captain, is the best way they put it, special counsel. And basically the big twist at the end with him is Q, who you thought was dying or did die at the end of season 2, pops up and says that his father's trial on humanity is over, but Jack's is just beginning. So what I'm hoping for is some kind of show that centers around this new crew with 7, Jack, Geordi's daughter, I should say, and what that relationship with Q and his trial is going to be. I know that there's going to be a Star Trek Section 31 coming with Michelle Yeoh reprising her role as Commander or Captain Georgiou, but it's the Mirrorverse version that's been in Star Trek Discovery. So there are things coming. I just hope that this is something that for sure is coming down the road, because obviously Picard's over. Discovery, I believe, is ending after this season, so that basically just leaves this new Michelle Yeoh show. And if they do anything else with Strange New Worlds, which hopefully they do, because that was an amazing show that I've watched recently as well, and reading some of the comics that literally tie in from right at the very end of season 1 through hopefully whatever season 2 is going to be. Like I said kind of at the top of this whole video in my very, very cheesy opening, I was very emotionally invested in this show as a kid. It was one of the very first ones that I got to see from beginning to end that was not a cartoon. So, like I said, it's been a very important thing to me. I've seen every single movie. I've loved every single movie. So, on an emotional scale, this whole season took me everywhere. There were times where I was dying with laughter. There are times where literally I had a tear come down my face, and anything between. So, for me as a Star Trek fan, and for anybody else who's watching this that is very into Star Trek, and you get into shows like this, just anything you get into, you understand what it's like to be very emotionally invested in something, and that's what this was for me. I'm happy with the way they ended the show. They ended it very much like The Next Generation on their last episode with the crew playing poker. If, for anybody who's not watched TNG, it was Picard's first time really coming in and playing poker with him, and he always wished that he had done it more. So in this one, it's him that pulls out the card during a toast, and they're all having a good time, and it was just fun, just a fun, lighthearted, great kind of fan service send off. I honestly, like I said, other than the little bit of a predictable thing with the Borg, I was very pleased with how they took this crew and how they went out with a bang. So yeah, those are my thoughts on everything. I was very happy. This was one of my favorite seasons of any show that I've watched in a long time. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. It literally just ended, so if you're a binge watching kind of person, all 10 episodes are there. Check them out. I really think you'll like it. If you're looking for something kind of new to get into, if you're a Star Trek fan that hasn't watched Star Trek in a while, watch it. It'll probably bring you right back into the universe, which is what it did for me. That's why I've kind of started going on this Star Trek kick with comics, going back through some of the old shows. You name it. I've got a couple of other Star Trek themed videos coming up. Just it's been inspiring, and I love it. I love that it makes me feel like that again. So, with that said, before I just continue to ramble on for another hour or so, I'm going to get out of y'all's hair. I hope everybody has a great rest of your week, a safe weekend, and as always, please stay safe, stay healthy. I will catch you guys next time. Later, everyone.